had to do? Literally nothing to do. I mean, except for play cards, go skiing, take his Turkish bath down in Vienna from, week to week. And it would seem that there's just nothing much for him on the horizons. But in this very sort of tongue-in-cheek comment, Launi says it was taking time for the Duke to accept the new situation, but there were compensations. And we need to take that with a grain of salt. These are the compensations. These are the things that he now has to do. Oh, there was an invitation to open the Zorine Springs nudist colony. Also, there was a request that he become the mayor of Chippewa Falls in Wisconsin. There's an opportunity. And finally, the Orpheum Theater in Los Angeles offered him and his, quote, lovely lady $1 million and a Hollywood mansion to star in a, quote, stupendous historical film. Look about those offers. You abdicated the throne, but don't worry. There's still a nudist colony you get to open up. Can you imagine feeling as depressed as you would have felt in that situation, and then you look around you and the offers are such as those? Can't wait to get to Chippewa Falls and be the mayor of a small town in Wisconsin. Now, David has shown himself to be completely oblivious this entire chapter, but his oblivion continues. He would call his brother at all hours of the night and day, and he believed that his brother, now the king, should have the time and, more importantly, the will to talk to him. Well, the king did not. Now, remember, his friend Fruity Metcalf is there witnessing all these things that are going on. He wrote to his wife every day, and we have some delicious excerpts from those letters. He wrote to his wife, tonight, David was told at dinner that His Royal Majesty wanted to talk on the phone to him. But David said he couldn't talk. He couldn't take the call, but he asked that it be put through at 10 p.m., so whenever he was available. The answer to this was that His Majesty said he could talk at 6:45 the next day, but he was too busy to talk at any other time. And it was really pathetic to see His Royal Highness's face. He couldn't believe it. He's been so used to having everything done as he wishes. I'm afraid he's going to have many more shocks like this. Yeah, I should think so. And eventually the king stopped taking David's calls altogether. He's like, don't even put him through. I've got bigger fish to fry than to hear what my whiny brother has to say about life. These phone calls, which were bugged by the Austrians, were not only to sort out his own affairs. His possessions had been moved from Fort Belvedere to Frogmore, but also to arrange a financial settlement and press for recognition of Wallace and the family, not least by the family attending their wedding. So that's probably why his brother stopped taking his calls. What does he want to hear anymore about this? He's in the trenches now, trying to figure out this new job as king, and his brother wants to keep calling and being like, why won't you recognize my girlfriend? She's gonna be my wife someday, I think, if we can get everything sorted out. She's part of the family. Why won't you acknowledge my girlfriend? I mean, if one of your family members kept calling you about that, you wouldn't take the calls either. And then all the day long being like, I need more money. I need more. You're not giving me enough. You know I have to have a certain standard of living. I don't have enough. Now, the truth ultimately is that his brother Bertie was actually sympathetic to his plight, but his mother, the Queen Mary, was adamant that nothing should give the impression that the royal family accepted the relationship, which is probably why he stopped taking the calls, because he just kept getting so much pressure from the rest of the family. Don't even entertain any ideas. Don't give David even one iota of an idea that we're okay with what's going on here. It's that woman that's caused all the trouble anyway. And this view of let's not even give anybody an idea that we're okay with this was shared by the new queen and most courtiers. When Lord Queensborough asked Elizabeth when the Duke might return to Britain, she supposedly replied, not until he comes to my funeral. The result was diminishing goodwill between the brothers and a resentment that was to last throughout the Duke's life. He was shocked that his younger brother did not have the time for long and frequent phone calls, but the real break in their friendship was over the financial settlement. Now, this is a little dull, but I think it's important. Now, the abdication, and in that settlement, it had said that David would receive £25,000 annually, which was traditionally voted for the younger brother of a sovereign. That would either come from the civil list, or if not approved by Parliament, then his brother would pay him the £25,000 a year. It was quickly discovered, though, that the ex-king had not been open about his financial situation, and he was far wealthier than he had claimed or was realized. He had told his brother that he had just under 100,000 pounds. Okay. When in fact, he had over 800,000 pounds squirreled away in a deposit abroad, much of it controlled by Mrs. Simpson. And another 80,000 pounds was shortly to be paid from the civil list and the duchies of Cornwall and Lancaster, the result of money saved over many years. So old David's over there acting like he can't pay his bills, acting like he can't give a decent present to Kitty Rothschild, acting like he ain't got 2 pennies to rub together. Meanwhile, he's got more money than any of them put together. The Duke felt his private wealth, though, was irrelevant to the compensation that he should receive from the crown. You know, that had nothing to do with what they owed him. And he was also very reluctant to relinquish his interests in Balmoral and Sandringham, because he reiterated that he was not being well provided for, and considering the position that he was going to have to maintain and all that he had to give up, he should really be given a lot more in the way of financial compensation. Brother, you could have had everything you wanted if you had just stayed where you were supposed to be. Okay? So don't come whining to all of us now, being like, since this has all been, I've been so terribly put upon, you owe me these many, many pounds. You put it upon your own shoulders. Negotiations over the issue were to continue over the next year. Now, this is the other thing. Remember his lawyer, Walter Monckton? Well, he got that guy to try and thrash out a financial settlement after Windsor supposedly threatened not to sell his interest in Balmoral and Sandringham, because he said that there was a bunch of sportsmen in New York from 7th Avenue who were only too willing to pay sufficient for shooting rights on those 2 estates, so to him. So he wasn't about to relinquish his rights in those estates because he could make some money off of these hunters who wanted the experience. So then they had to drag out all this business about a mock sale of Sandringham, York Cottage, Balmoral, Burke Hall, and their contents. And it gave a value of 256,000 pounds, which put into a trust fund brought an annual income of 5,000 pounds. Rather than open a can of worms by seeking money through the civil list, George VI agreed to top this up by 20,000 pounds. In return, Windsor agreed to pay 5,000 pounds of pensions to former members of staff. So all these people are out on a job because of his sudden decision to just leave. So he does owe them some kind of compensation. But of course, that money, that 5,000 pounds, is going to come off the annual income from all of his sales of Sandringham, York Cottage, Balmoral, and Burke Hall. But it is a mock sale because, he's decided to leave. When you decide to leave, do you even get to retain your rights in all of these estates? It was so ridiculous. It was all just such a ridiculous fight. If you're no longer king, if you've said, I don't want the throne, that means you also don't get the benefits of having been the king. You withdraw your rights to the estates. So to then come around and be like, well, what are you going to compensate me for my hold on all these? You don't have a hold on them. You're not the king anymore. It's not your property anymore. It's not your throne. It's not your crown. It's nothing. So, they were really just throwing him a bone to keep him quiet and to get him on his way, because they really shouldn't have had to pay him a dime, Anyway, I think the real thing is that if it had just been him, they might have been able to cut him out. What do they care about his whining? Just don't answer his calls. But the person they're really worried about was that Mrs. Simpson. She was way more of a problem to them. And she had promised that if she didn't get what she wanted, she would show back up in England and be a problem. And that's probably why they did what they did as far as giving him what he didn't deserve.